My name is Gene Matthews, and I'll be your host today for another program of Northport, A View from Here. Sitting with us today is Chief Auclair, Michael Auclair from the City of Northport Fire Department, and also Dwayne Weiss, who is a forester with the Division of Forestry. Both these men deal with fires on a regular basis, and we'll be discussing some of the aspects of their particular job. Dwayne also is the forester in charge of our new state forest right here in Northport. Over the past several months, we've been having a terrific drought. And Chief Auclair, how has that affected us and our fires and our general well-being out there in the hinterlands, if you will?
Well, this is a particularly interesting time, obviously, due to the drought. There's an index that measures moisture that at 800 is considered to be desert-like conditions. Mm-hmm. We've been in the 600s and 700s now for several months, obviously creating a pretty good potential for a major brush fire in the area.
Yeah, if a wildfire breaks out, most people would be prepared to stand and defend their houses. And I'm not sure that's a good idea, and I don't know that it's a bad idea. So what's your opinion on it?
Well, normal reaction, obviously, is to take care of your property. But fires burn extremely warm and hot, and the little garden hoses that most folks have around the home, it's not going to be adequate to stop the fire. Mm-hmm. We prefer maybe a little preventative measures beforehand that maybe could stop the fire from getting to the house. Okay,
do you have any suggestions on what those, what preventative maintenance would to prevent this, how they can improve their fire safety situation?
Yeah, there's several things a homeowner can do. One is to clear a 15 to 25 foot space from the wildfire or from the woodland to their home. Keep their gutters clean and free of leaves and pine tree things. Keep their tree limbs away from the fireplaces. When they leave their home, shut all their windows and things, and just some good housekeeping skills, maybe.
Okay, that sounds great. Has the park been affected by these wildfires this year, Forester?
We have had one lightning-caused fire on the forest this year. It only reached about 6 acres, and we were able to get it under control fairly quickly.
That's better than your neighbor across River Road, Taylor Ranch, who had quite a bit.
There were 2 or 3 days in a row where there were several major fires going on the ranch.
What's the difference between a wildfire and a control burn, or they have a new name for it? What's the new name? Prescription?
We call them prescribed burns. The major difference is that a prescribed burn is planned. There are boundaries that are predetermined, and we call them fire lines, and those lines are either installed or cleaned up before we start a fire. That way we can determine exactly where the boundaries of that fire will be, whereas a wildfire occurs with no planning, no timing or anything like that. It just happens when and where there is an ignition source.
Yeah, in the minds of most people, fire out in the woods, whatever, is considered bad. Why is control burning good?
Well, fire is a very natural thing in Florida. It is estimated that in the typical type of ecosystem in this area, a naturally caused lightning fire would occur every 2 to 5 years. So it's going to happen. And that's mainly with lightning. And then there's also other ignitions. Fire, just the trees and the plants are fire dependent in this area. So fire just has to happen for them to survive.
So in other words, you have to burn out all that understory, let the forest breathe, if you will, and give new nesting places for animals and such. So what you're saying then is that if we were back 500 years and the Everglades was on fire like it is now, or off and on like it is now, that would be great. That would be good. There would be no suppression.
Exactly. And if we have to put fires out now because there are homes out in the woods, there are roads that could cause accidents with smoke on the roads, and therefore when the fire is put out you get this tremendous buildup of fuels, so control burning has to be done to remove those fuels as well.
Now the other concern that myself and as a former firefighter and a lot of the people in Northport are concerned with is that these fires are occurring when there's no lightning and no storm imminent or coming upon us. We all assume it's arson. What do you have to say about that?
Arson is a concern in this area. There are several areas throughout the state where there are a large number of arson fires every year, and this is one of those areas. So that does definitely come into play. And there's also other things, equipment,
Catalytic converters.
children, catalytic converters if it is extremely dry, and if it's dry enough, even smoking.
So in other words, if you park your car after you've driven it 100 miles over some dried grass, you're going to start a fire.
There is a chance of that, yes.
So that's a good warning for all of us out there to be careful where we park our hot cars. And that's not stolen cars, those are just in temperature. How is the wildlife affected by fires?
If you'll go to illustration number 2, this is something that we did run into on one of our prescribed burns. We did find an eagle's nest on the state forest that we were not aware of before we started, so we had to stop the burn in progress. Generally speaking, wildlife is not affected that greatly. They may have to move a little bit. There are occasions in an extremely hot wildfire where some wildlife may be caught.
Yeah. This even applies to the small little ground animals, that rabbits and mice, and
Right.
they can get out of the way fast enough. What do snakes do?
Some snakes go underground. Some of the smaller animals go underground. Some of them just move out of the way. These animals have been living out in the woods for years and years, and if they've been around a while, they've seen fire many times, most likely.
Okay, so in other words, they're pretty good survivors.
Right.
And the wildfire in the long run will help them.
Right.
It'll create better habitat for them. That's important. What kind of cooperation do you all have between, I'll address this to you, Chief, between the Division of Forestry on the firefighting side and your own department?
Fortunately, we enjoy a real good relationship with Division of Forestry. They did a study back in the 80s for us to evaluate the fuel loading in the city, and have been a real supporter of us as far as prescribed burning and equipment and just general interaction. We rely on them heavily, obviously, during this, what we call brush fire season. This has branched out some, I think, also to include some of the other agencies around town, so that the majority of folks now really rely on DOF and their relationship.
Okay, that's very good. We're going to come back to that question. Right now, we're going to take a short break.
Have you seen Northport lately? Take a minute and take a look.
We really do enjoy nature, and we found it all here, right in our own backyard. Love fishing and boating on the Myakka. You never know what you might see out there. We toured the whole state of Florida and found that Northport had everything that we wanted.
There's a lot of natural beauty, and there's a lot of wildlife here. And I love the open spaces, and I love the quiet.
If you're intrigued by what you just saw, pay us a visit, and you'll see a lot more.
Welcome back to the second segment of Northport, a view from here. When we closed the last session out, we were speaking with Chief Eau Claire about the cooperation during fire operations between themselves and the Division of Forestry. And my next question is, Chief, do we have similar arrangements with other firefighters, firefighting organizations? Because we not only fight forest fires, but we also do houses, commercial buildings, and such. And why do we have these agreements?
There's been a drastic change over the last 5 to 10 years in the traditional fire department, if you will. There used to be a lot of boundaries established by fire departments for their own agencies. Division of Forestry has kind of been the lead agency all through the United States in organizing combat to firefighting and putting the efforts into one basket, if you will, in coordination. The local agencies now, we share many mutual aid agreements, both with Charlotte, Sarasota, DeSoto, Manatee, and all these areas, because we all know that not any of us can individually handle a large event. So therefore, by establishing resources ahead of time with these other agencies, we're better able to combat the situation.
I mean, does this allow an area, let's say, of several towns buy special equipment, cascade equipment or whatever, and so no one unit has to bear the whole cost of it?
Correct. It's kind of a reciprocal agreement where the specialty trucks or the specialty needed equipment may be housed in an agency, and unless it's needed in their agency at the time, it can be brought to other places and vice versa. Manpower and equipment are so crucial, and they're pretty much able to come and go without those jurisdictional boundaries we used to have established.
Okay, so the people in Northport can feel secure that if we don't have enough equipment, we can call it from elsewhere.
Yes, we've been very fortunate with that.
That's great, that's great. June 1st starts our hurricane season. Now, you know that on television, the radio, you're going to be inundated. We're all going to be inundated with what to do, what not to do, what to supply, what not to supply. Wildfires can be just as catastrophic in their own sense. Do we, or does the state, do enough to advise people as to the consequences and the dangers of wildfire?
Well, I think there's been a heightened awareness, specifically in Florida, since last year, when the 500,000 acres and several homes were burned. We treat in Northport the season from December to about June as wildfire season, where we try to do some extra educational efforts and try to make people a little bit more aware of what they can do to protect themselves, similar to preparing for the hurricane season. Prepare for the wildfire season is a similar effort. And throughout the United States, I think that is kind of a grasping, grassroots thing.
Yeah, many years ago, it used to be that March was the prescribed burning month, but I don't see that. Has that changed or diminished this year, the prescribed burning?
There is kind of a changing theory that a lot of people are trying to do more burning during the summer months when a fire would more naturally occur. The problem is when you have heavy fuel loadings, it's a little bit safer to burn in March. So there's probably about probably more than half still burn in the winter season.
So there's still an evolving technology there, if you will.
Right.
Does the Division of Forestry have any programs for educating citizens about wildfire?
We do have some brochures that are available. They have printed brochures about what Chief Auclair was talking about earlier, about protecting your home, giving it a defensible space, things of that nature, and those are available through the Division of Forestry offices.
Chief, we're going back to the more conventional firefighting that we all see in town. We're a Class 4 ISO rated city. What does that mean to the average citizen in Northport?
Mainly it's a dollar thing. ISO, the Insurance Services Organization, rates each fire department in their ability to combat and protect people from fire. That includes the equipment, the manpower, the response times, water supply, dispatching effort, the whole conglomeration, if you will, of efforts towards combating firefighting. The prevention efforts is also considered in that whole element. What that means is they come in and evaluate.
We see an awful lot of new or real heavy equipment. Is there a criteria for pumpers and ladder trucks and things like that?
Yes.
To keep us at that Class 4?
Yes. There's a certain amount of equipment that has to be carried on each type of truck that has to have a minimum of 500-gallon water tank and enough hose to reach hydrants in the system. Also has to have a ladder truck response, which is a main element of all types of structural component firefighting.
Okay. You mentioned the ladder truck. I'm sure you've never heard the question before, but we only have, I think, a maximum of 2 or 3 stories within the city. People have asked me over the years, why do we need a ladder truck?
Oh, it's funny you should ask that. I hear that quite a bit.
I'm sure you do.
The ladder truck is used not only for rescuing people, but for elevating the water stream to get it up above the first floor. We have a lot of shopping centers, the schools, those types of things that are long buildings that require a stream to be elevated up higher than 10 or 12 feet. That way, with the ladder, they can be brought up to that level and also reach across those buildings.
You probably, if you needed to reach across the canal, you could do that pretty handily with that.
Yeah, that's
okay. All right. Now, we also have a rescue side of the fire department. Give us a little rundown on that, how much equipment you have, how many people are trained, their levels of training and things of that nature.
Okay. Everyone in the City of Northport's fire department is a minimum of fire and EMT trained. We also have half the department that's paramedic trained. Therefore, they're what we call cross-trained. They can deal with fire emergencies and they can also deal with medical emergencies. That's why we always get the question, how come the fire truck follows the ambulance and vice versa? The general idea behind that is because the folks can do both jobs. We put them on scene to take care of the immediate situation, and if they're not needed, they can then return to service and be ready to go to another call, whether it be a fire or a medical call.
So they bring their fire equipment with them so they can respond accordingly.
Yes.
That's good. One of the exciting things that happened in Northport was we got a state forest. Dwayne, maybe you could give us a rundown on the size of it and what kind of land it is, and just say what you want.
The Myakka State Forest was purchased in October of 1995, and it is 8,500 acres. Most of that land is pine flatwoods, which is illustration number 6 would be a typical view of that. Would be pine trees with palmettos understory.
The recreation trails.
We do have 2 marked recreational trails that are designated for multiple use, and that includes horseback riding, off-road bicycling, and hiking. Those 2 trails total 12.8 miles. We also have about 30 miles of unmarked trails that are open to the same uses.
And we have to take a break now. We will come back in a minute. We'll finish up this conversation with our forester friend, and we'll see you in a moment.
There's a rumor that small-town America has all but disappeared.
Life is great, Northport.
Northport is the last Mohican. This is the place. This is going to be the last undeveloped region. The city government itself is so pro-growth, and it's just like everything is in the right place at the right time for Northport. They're very open-minded, they're very honest, and they're very fair.
Disappeared? You've just seen evidence to the contrary. We call it Northport.
Welcome back to the third segment of Northport, A View from Here. When we went off camera before, we were speaking about the facilities at the forest, Northport's forest. Dwayne, you said that there were 12.5 miles of trails and 30 of marked trails and 30 miles of unmarked trails. Is it being marked in any way as to the flora and fauna, so we can identify some things when we walk through on these nature trails? Good for kids, good for school trips.
Right. At this time, we don't have anything like that. In the next couple of years, we will be developing more recreational facilities, including campsites, things like that. And part of that will be a nature trail with more of an interpretive aspect to it, where things like that are identified.
Are there opportunities for conservation groups to come in and do, studies on from the flora to scrub jays and all that they're interested in?
Absolutely, absolutely. We do have a volunteer that is doing a survey of the flora that is on the site at this time.
That's great. That's great. How do we get there? How do we use it? What do we do?
The entrance to the state forest is on River Road, about 5 or 6 miles south of US 41. And from that point, you can drive in about a mile, and there's a nice parking area that is being developed at this time. From that point, you can go to the trailheads and do what we call dispersed recreation, where basically you go to one location and you go off and kind of do your own thing.
If I wanted to camp there, could I do it?
Not at this time. Those things are coming in the future. The process by which you can develop any type of recreational facilities is kind of slow at the beginning in a state forest. There's management plans that have to be approved, all those types of things. So those things are on the way.
The management plan, of course, is very critical to all its usage. Do you have a time frame as to when the state's going to come up with a management plan for the forest?
Not really. The process by which a management plan is approved has just recently been changed. So we're kind of trying out a new process, and it involves a couple of new steps. One of those new steps is that we will be holding a public hearing where people can provide input into the management plan, things that they'd like to see, things that they're concerned about. And that's something that's fairly new for the Division of Forestry, so we're kind of feeling that out as we go.
Okay. We have close to us Oscar Shear State Park, we have Myakka River State Park, and we have our forest. What's the difference between a park and a forest?
The primary difference is the managing agency. The state park system is managed by the Department of Environmental Protection, and the state forests are managed by the Department of Agriculture, which the Division of Forestry is a part of. There are some kind of generalizations you can make about the two, where a state park has more intense recreational use, where people come to one location, a little bit more developed, and the Division of the state forests are more dispersed. Also, the state parks generally don't allow consumptive uses like hunting or timber harvesting, things like that, whereas some of those things can take place on a state forest.
Yeah. Are there many industrial uses or commercial uses to a state forest?
There are. There can be anything from timber harvesting to palmetto berry harvesting to cattle grazing to apiary leases for beekeepers. Anything like that can be considered on a state forest. And some of those will probably be looked into for Myakka State Forest.
I've heard of all of them except the one about the berry picking. What is that?
I'm not sure exactly what they use palmetto berries for, but that is the fact that they can even harvest palmetto fronds.
Oh, okay. Chief, how does they're equipped with bulldozers to do their firefighting. How do we, as the city fire department, assist them when we go out to a fire?
Well, it's too bad we can't go to Northport right now. We could witness it firsthand. Generally, they build a perimeter around it, and then we try to assist by keeping it within that perimeter. The bulldozers are able to create a protective space, if you will, between the new fuel and the burning area, and therefore gives us a chance to go in and contain it within that perimeter.
Has the weather department given us any hope for the drought going away?
Not that I've heard of as of yet.
Not yet, huh? How about the state? Do they have any...
I'm not aware of any good outlook at this point.
No.
They can't predict too far in the future, but the short term doesn't look like there's a lot of moisture coming.
If you had anything to say about the forest today, what would it be?
Oh gosh, we'll be advertising it soon and letting you know we'll have a grand opening, and I hope everybody comes out to see it.
Is there a information number or anything that people can call today?
Yes, we do have a number, my office at 941-751-7629.
Okay, so that's 751-7629, and that'll be at your office in what town?
Bradenton.
Bradenton. Okay, that's great. Chief?
Once again, just hopefully we can help people protect their stuff, because people aren't really concerned with fire. They're really concerned with protecting their stuff. So hopefully with this education and awareness on wildfires, we can help them do so.
Okay, we're going to take a break now. We're going to come back with a special surprise when we come back. So stay tuned, and I think you'll be glad you will. Thank you.
Have you seen Northport lately? Take a minute and take a look.
We really do enjoy nature, and we found it all here, right in our own backyard. Love fishing and boating on the Myakka. You never know what you might see out there. We toured the whole state of Florida and found that Northport had everything that we wanted.
There's a lot of natural beauty, and there's a lot of wildlife here. And I love the open spaces, and I love the quiet.
If you're intrigued by what you just saw, pay us a visit, and you'll see a lot more.
Welcome back. We have Tricia Finch with us today now from the Northport Public Library. As part of the Northport's 40th anniversary programs, the library ran a poet contest or a poetry contest for ages 3 through 5. And Tricia's here to report on that, and she's going to read the winning poem. So Tricia, how are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
Okay. Who was the person, the young person that won first prize?
His name is Danny Cassidy.
Danny Cassidy. Okay.
And he's a student at Glen Allen Elementary.
Uh-huh. And how old is Danny?
He's a 4th grader.
4th grader. And maybe we'll just start right off and have you read the poem for us right now.
Sure. Danny would have been here himself today, but he had a family emergency. Northport is small and Tampa is big. Northport has only many malls. 40 years seems long ago. No homes, no stores, no place to go. But Northport is beginning to grow. Now we have homes, stores, and places to go. First we had Winn-Dixie, a post office, and a lighthouse to show the way if I wanted to spend the day at the bay.
That's pretty good. I'm not sure Danny would remember the lighthouse that was here, but certainly his words are well taken.
Yes.
How many children participated in this, and I guess more important, how were they selected, or how was the winning poem selected? And if you could give us that information, appreciate it.
Sure. We had approximately 80 kids return poems to the library. We had a panel of judges evaluate the poems, and they selected the 3 winners. And the judges were all local poets from Northport.
Oh, so it was a real collaboration of a lot of people and a lot of kids. That's wonderful that so many children participated.
Yes.
That's great. You have summer programs running or going to run very shortly. Perhaps you could explain some of that to our viewing public so maybe their kids can take part in it.
Sure. We're going to kick off our summer programs on June 21st, and actually the first day of our program will be like a big party.
Am I invited?
Of course.
Okay,
everyone in
good.
Northport is invited. We'll be outside the library Monday, June 21st from 1 to 4. We'll have a clown, and we're going to have some lemonade, and we're going to have all sorts of fun things for the kids to do. And then we'll have elementary programs for 6 weeks and 4 days a week.
Okay. And how many kids will you be able to handle?
We really haven't set limits on it. We never know who's going to show up and how many kids.
Okay. But you'll handle all you can, and you'll have a good time doing it, too.
We will.
Okay, great. This brings to a close today's issue of Northport, A View from Here. And I want to thank you all for coming and visiting with us. I'm sorry that Danny Cassidy couldn't be here to read the poem himself. It's really neat when you see these kids out there doing things. Poetry is not dead, I guess, in Sarasota County or in Northport. So once again, thank you very much, and see you.
I guess I got beat up an average of 4 or 5 times a month. The lowest point, I think, was when I called my father to come and pick me up, take me to the hospital. I was on welfare when I left my husband. I needed financial help. I was not happy doing nothing. I was motivated to do more with my life. I wanted more. People tell me how lucky I am, and I always tell them, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
We're not asking you to hire everyone on welfare, just one.